Hello, it's me, Vicky Marie. Sorry, I didn't realise then that I was that the video had finished. Think, can all hear me? Can you hear me? Let me know that you can all hear me. Okay. Let me just see what's going on. I can check on my. Yeah, I think you can all hear me. Okay. Okay. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this crazy, crazy world we're living in. Now, I don't know, some of you maybe, I have had people watching from Thailand, but of course, Laos, that we're going to talk about today, is a different country apparently, which I didn't know. I knew absolutely nothing about Laos before this incidents of these poor girls who've died. And these are just three of the tourists, female tourists, that have died. We haven't got really any information about the others, or much information. Maybe for whatever reason, I don't know. So these three girls, the two girls on the left and the right of the picture, they are best friends and they're Australian. And the girl in the middle is a British lawyer, but they were all killed in the same way. And there's an investigation going on in Laos. This apparently is quite a common thing because of the cheap homemade alcohol that's used there. It's a popular tourist destination, backpacker destination. Young people, going in their gap years or whatever and looking for free. They're not looking for a free holiday. They're looking for a cheap holiday, aren't they? So a lot of these hostels that they stay in, they offer free drinks, to try and, that's the competition with the other places. They're all offering free drinks to try and encourage people to come and drink with them. So I suppose it's like, what's the word that I'm looking for? I suppose it's like, it's an economical necessity in a way to keep things cheap, because even they're so cheap, the drinks there. What I found is this podcast that we're going to listen to that will give us more of an insight of actually what it's like in Laos and why this tragedy has probably happened. It's hard to believe that it's a deliberate way of sort of killing tourists. It's probably a very, very sad accident, people going too far in the stuff that they're putting in the alcohol to make it cheap, to make it go further, making their own alcohol, etc. So it's probably a very tragic, very, very tragic accident, because not only six people died, there were a lot of people poisoned as well. So, that were seriously ill in hospital. But six so far have actually died. And I think the other reason it's such a tragedy, has claimed so much attention, is they're very young people having the holiday of a lifetime, if you like, enjoying their youth. Also from all over the globe, so there's the two Australian girls, the British girl, there's an American tourist, there's a New Zealand tourist. They're and I think Swedish tourists as well. Is it Swedish or Danish? But somewhere from the Nordic part of Europe. So it sort of touched all parts of the globe just because of the different nationalities of the people that have been affected by it. And although it seems, from what you'll hear in this podcast we're going to listen to, it seems like there are often deaths for these reasons, that the alcohol is not pure, not proper alcohol. It's homemade and it's made with poisons and things. But normally it's unusual for six people to die all on one day, or practically from one incident. So there may be like deaths every now and again, individual deaths. But because there were so many all at one time and from so many different nationalities, it has attracted this media attention, which it does deserve, because the reason this case or these cases deserve attention is because there needs to be warnings put out to young people. And again, you'll hear that in this podcast we're about to listen to. It's not about don't go to these places. There's a lot of reasons to go. You know, there's a lot of nice things about these places. It's good that you can, but just, you know, don't go with your holiday head, go with your, you know, sensible head, and just take precautions. Like anything else, really, isn't it? It's like when someone gets attacked walking their dog. We can't stop walking our dogs in nice areas. As someone gets, I don't know, things happen to people by a river, someone falls in a river. You can't stop going by rivers. You shouldn't. What you've got to do, though, is be sensible, isn't it? And you've got to be aware. So I think the good thing, the positive thing, if you like, the one positive thing that's come out of this, it will highlight attention for other people going, and not only young people, all ages go traveling. You know, there's granny packers as well as the young people, the young backpackers. And people just might be on a holiday there because it's something different from going to Spain or any of the typical holiday places. It's cheap. The weather's nice, you know, at certain times of the year, etc. So it shouldn't stop people going, but as long as we go with the warning, or we warn our friends, our family, our loved ones that are going, give them the warnings. This is, you know, so sad. And it made me especially feel sad because, you know, it's coming up to Christmas. So just in these pictures here, there's 3 families that are going to have a horrible Christmas. That's besides the other 3 people that died. That's besides the other people that were poisoned and spent time in hospital. So, you know, for a lot of people, Christmas will just never be the same again, even though it didn't happen at Christmas, but it's in the build up to Christmas, and Christmas will be a very, very difficult time for these people. Anyway, I'm just going to say hello to everybody, and then I'll start. I'll give you a little reminder of what happened, just in case there's anybody out there who doesn't know what happened in this case. Hi, Jay. Hi, David. Hi, Shelley. Hi, Darren. Hi, Laurie. I do, David. I need an atlas for Christmas. I'm getting better. I'm a lot better at geography than I was. I'm a lot better at geography than I used to be since I've started doing these true crime videos. Oh, and also just to start, because I need to say my thank yous to everybody. We had a very interesting stream last night. I got loads of members now. So I want to thank my subscribers, everyone who likes my video. I want to thank especially my members, people who gift memberships, people who've PayPal me, sent me bought me a Ko-fi, or sent me a super sticker. Thank you so much for contributing to my channel in any positive way. Thank you. So, okay, now I'm on the avatar today because although I was up at the crack of dawn as always, I had so much to do today, and I had classes as well. I haven't had time to get ready properly, in the sense of put my lippy on and do my hair, etc., that I like to do when I'm doing a stream. So you've got the avatar today. Also, it's really cold. I mean, it says it's 14 degrees. It feels like about 4 degrees. My hands are freezing. So it's very, very cold here in the house today. So I'm on the avatar. But anyway, never mind. Tonight, I will be back tonight at some point, and I will have done my hair by then. Okay, so let's just give people a recap if you don't remember or you didn't know. Some people might not know about this story. Let's see. Where is it? So this is the BBC article that I'm just going to read out to you to just give you, as I say, a recap. This is the 3 girls that are highlighted in the photos on my thumbnail. A second Australian teenager has died of suspected methanol poisoning. So I did do a video on this before, and we looked into what methanol was. It literally is poison, but it's being used to make alcohol. I mean, it's unbelievable, really. So I think it's a miracle that more people haven't died. You can't give people poison and not expect some people to die. Now, it is a little bit strange, although I didn't feel like there was any criminality here in the sense of, deliberately trying to kill someone. It's strange that they're all women, that's all. So were they particularly targeted because they were women? Or is it just because maybe they're slighter build and their bodies couldn't tolerate it as much as maybe if somebody is more sort of substantial? I just don't know. Why is it all women? That's the only question I would ask as far as the sort of suspiciousness. Is why women only? Why have no men died of it, or not in this batch anyway? So this has brought to 6 the number of foreign tourists who have died after apparently drinking tainted alcohol in Laos. So the family of Holly Bowles, 19 years old, said it was with broken hearts that they confirmed her death more than a week after she fell ill in the tourist town of Vang Vieng. So that same age as Jay Slater, who was on his first holiday on his own. And do you remember, we looked at, because her friend Bianca Jones, she's also 19. The lawyer, Simone White, the British lawyer, she's a little bit older, 28, but still so very young. Who's from London. They both died on the Thursday. This article was, when was this article? 22nd of November. It's just so sad. So these two girls, Holly, who's on the left, and Simone, who's on the, Simone's in the middle, the lawyer, and Bianca, who's on the right, 19 years old. I mean, so the thing is, our children, we were once 19 and went off and did silly things. And then what happens, we become parents, and then our children at 19 want to go off and do silly things. And we want to sort of scream at them and say, no, don't go. But of course, we can't do that. We've got to let them lead their lives, do what they want to do. These two girls had saved up for this holiday. I don't know about Simone. I don't know what the circumstances, whether it was like a 2-week holiday, because she was a lawyer, so I presume she was working in the UK. These two girls had saved up for this holiday, were looking forward to it. And it was like the last time they were ever going to see their parents again when they said goodbye to them at the airport or wherever it was. So it's so sad, because you have to let them go. You cannot say to them, no, you're not going. Well, you can't make them not go anyway, because they're adults by then. But they're only just adults, aren't they? They haven't really got their adult head on properly. And you know that because you remember what it's like to have not had your adult head on and the daft things you did. But you can't stop them from doing whatever they want to do, can you? It's a very scary time. People think it gets better when your children get older. It definitely doesn't. So an unnamed, it's a man. It says an unnamed US man. Oh, so there is one man, 2 Danish women, aged 19 and 20. Oh, so they're very young as well. Or I suppose the reason we haven't heard so much about them is because they're Danish, and a lot of the information about them will be in a different language, I suppose, but I haven't really seen anything about them. Are also among the victims of the suspected poisoning, believed to be connected to bootleg alcohol. In a statement released to media, Holly's family said they were taking comfort from the fact she had brought so much joy and happiness to so many people. They added that she had been living her best life, travelling through East Asia, meeting new friends, and enjoying incredible experiences when she became ill. Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong said, all Australians will be heartbroken by the tragic passing of Holly Bowles. I offer my deepest sympathies to her family and friends. So Holly and Bianca were taken to hospital on Wednesday, the 13th of November, after they failed to check out of their hostel in the small riverside town of Vang Vieng, about 2 hours north of the capital, Vientiane. And it does look beautiful. You can see it's a completely different place. If you went there, it'd be different from anywhere you've ever experienced before, isn't it? It's an experience. People want experiences, don't they? Not only young people. So news reports and testimonies suggest that tourists may have consumed alcohol laced with methanol, a deadly substance often found in bootleg alcohol. Our medical specialists say drinking as little as 25 milliliters of methanol can be fatal, but it is sometimes added to drinks because it is cheaper than alcohol. So, I'm trying to sort of get my head around this and understand. So they're making their own alcohol, their own whiskey, their own vodka or whatever, but instead of using alcohol in it, they're using methanol. So Krista Hogstrand, a professor of molecular ecotoxicology at King's College London, points out it's also not uncommon in home distilled alcohol. Methanol is like the alcohol in our drinks, colourless and odourless, but its impact on humans can be deadly. It has a different carbon atom structure, which completely changes how humans process it in the body, leading to these potentially fatal consequences. So the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office updated its travel advice to reflect the dangers of methanol poisoning in Laos on Wednesday. And it urges tourists to only buy alcohol beverages from licensed shops and to seek urgent medical advice if they suspect they've been poisoned. Yeah, and later again in this podcast that we're going to listen to, there's a young lad who did this experience, saying it's probably only $1 or £1 per drink in these places. And, you can imagine that for a young person who's on a budget, that's very tempting, isn't it? Because to buy the cheap drinks rather than the brand drinks. And to be honest, even if you have the brand ones, you don't know if they've put that, if once that bottle was open, say they've got a bottle of whiskey that looks like it's a brand whiskey, you don't know if it's been filled up with, with crap whiskey, with homemade whiskey once it's empty. You just don't know, do you? So it advises tourists to only buy alcoholic beverages from licensed shops and to seek urgent medical advice if they've been poisoned. But the thing is, how do they know which shops are licensed? I mean, you've got to have a lot of awareness. If you go in a shop and they've got a license on the, in Laos, you go in a shop in Laos and it's got a notice on the wall saying this shop is licensed. Maybe not even in English. How would you even know that was a genuine sign? It's a whole different ball game out there, isn't it? So it's not yet known where any of the people who fell sick or died were poisoned. So the guy from the hostel has been arrested, hasn't he? Because they think it comes from one particular hostel, but he's denying that because he was giving them free shots, whether they were all from that hostel. This Nana backpacker hostel said it gave out free shots to around 100 guests the previous evening. But the hostel's manager said no other guests had become unwell. Well, he has been detained. I don't know if he's been released yet or, but there is an ongoing investigation. So we just have to wait to see. But of course, the investigation is being conducted by the Laos police. I mean, Laos is a dictatorship. It's a one-person, one-party dictatorship. They won't want any bad press for tourists. So, can't be sure that whatever comes out of the oh look, there it is. We can't be sure that whatever comes out of the inquiry is even true, really, can we? So it's a difficult one. Okay, so that's basically the background to this podcast that we're going to listen to. I'm just going to come back to the chat now. I hope you're all okay. I think you are. Yeah, that's the background to the story. And now we're going to listen to this podcast. I'm going to comment on it. We're going to listen to it under fair use. So this is a podcast from Times Radio. And what I've noticed is a lot of mainstream sort of media people, they've started doing podcasts now, haven't they? They're sort of doing a more YouTube podcast style to their news reports, because they've realised that newspapers are just sort of becoming obsolete, aren't there? People aren't reading newspapers. People are turning to YouTube and podcasts for their news. So I noticed they're responding like this. So Times Radio, I've watched quite a few of their podcasts recently, and they're a little bit, what's the word for it? They're a little bit twee. Twee is, I don't know if you know that word, twee. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Hang on. No, that's not what I want. I want the podcast. Hang on. Oh, where is it? There it is. Yeah, a little bit twee. The lady that reads that does this podcast, Inside Story, I think it's called. She's very posh. She's got a nice voice, actually, but a posh voice, like that Joanna Lumley voice, but it's very nice, very soothing. But, just sometimes she comes over as a little bit not maybe genuine, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. I think the actual podcast itself is very interesting. The people that she's talking to are interesting because they're giving us an inside view into how it is in Laos. And the second guy that she talks to, he used to work there in the bars, etc. He's been a backpacker, so he gives us a unique sort of view of what people are looking for in this when they go backpacking there, and young people especially. They're just looking to have a good time, aren't they? And they should, because you know what? If you don't get a chance to have a good time when you're young, by the time you get older and you've got mortgages and kids, what have you, everything gets more serious, doesn't it? And everything. So this is the time when you're young like that you should really go out and have a good time before you get tied down with all the other stuff that happens in life. And then you have to wait until you come. Well, you think that, when your kids are grown up, you do this and you do that. And of course, these days, that never really happens because children, even adult children, they're just not as independent as they used to be. So, if you get it done while you're young, that's what I'd say. Oh, just looking at these girls, it's very sad. Anyway, so we're going to listen to this podcast because I think it's very interesting.
From the Times and the Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Manveen Rana. Imagine an idyllic little town, perched in the foot of the mountains by a roaring river with rows of wooden houses on stilts and an unlikely number of bars.
The bar that I worked in was sort of on its own little island. It sort of looks like a slum bar, and it has a huge sort of square rectangle where everyone can come around, and all the staff are inside serving the drinks and the drug menu if anyone wants that.
The what? The drug menu?
The menus, I remember, would always have weed, mushrooms and opium, and you could have each one of them in your bucket, your free alcohol bucket that you would get. It would be whizzed up with a banana.
with a banana. So imagine a drugs menu. So not only are you getting your bar menu, like, you know, your burger and chips or whatever it is, and then you get your drugs menu as well. Now, I'm not saying these girls went for that. Let's not forget there's no proof that we know that they were on anything else except for just having a drink. But what this boy or this guy is just talking about, that is what you could have if you wanted. That's like, it's horrible, really, to be honest, I think.
Which would probably be the most expensive part. Or you have something called the disco bucket, which was famous, which was everything in there mixed up. And it just looked like a big bucket of mud. And that's all free. And all the Westerners sort of like, I can't believe this. And it's because it's their cheapest commodity, the alcohol there. It's all just made in the tin shed. And it costs absolutely nothing. The whiskey there, I remember, was $1, which is cheaper than the beer there.
This is Vang Vieng, a little town in Laos, which is a firm fixture on the modern Grand Tour, where young, carefree Westerners and gap year students come armed with backpacks and a desire to party. But partying here is like nothing they'll have ever experienced before.
No one's having an easy night, for sure. Everyone who's coming in is not having early nights. Everyone's getting probably the most on the spectrum of fucked up that you could get within Southeast Asia that I saw. People were getting a different kind of drunk there, for sure.
Oh, just a little warning. He does use a little bit of bad language, this guy. So just be prepared if you don't like bad language. If you're offended by bad language, he does use a little bit of bad language. And don't forget, this is a podcast. So I don't think this picture changes all the way through. So
For even people who weren't doing drugs, I think it was also the freeness of it. You know, we can't turn down free alcohol. You think it's precious to you. And I think it's sort of installed in you as a Westerner that, oh, I've been given a commodity here that's valuable. It doesn't matter if you want to drink or not, you better take it because it's like a waste. You know, you've been given free booze, especially as a teenager when you're on a budget. One bucket is just lethal.
It should have been the perfect holiday. But with 6 young tourists now dead, how did a night out in Vang Vieng go so wrong? The story today, inside the Laos party town where people die.
yeah, so the thing is, as well, these, I mean, I don't know, in Britain, you see, although, you know, yeah, of course you can get drugs and you can get really drunk, but it's very expensive to do that in Britain, isn't it? So you're probably restricted by your budget as to how many drugs you can take and how much alcohol you can drink. But of course, when you go to a place like this where everything's so cheap or even free, there's no limit. So you might be used to drinking a certain amount, maybe taking a certain amount of substances, and then suddenly you're in a place where it's unlimited because but you know, for a tenner, you can buy what normally you would probably spend. You wouldn't be able to have in a month in your country. Suddenly, you could have all that in one night. So it's, and when you're on holiday, like when I was young, it would be going to Spain where that would happen. You know, you'd go to Spain and you couldn't believe the size of the measures and the price of them and what have you. And but of course now, even cheaper again. These girls who've been saving their money, or tourists in general, saving their money, and then God, if you had if you only had £100 to spend, you'd be able to have a great time, wouldn't you?
I'm Richard Lloyd Parry, the Asia editor of The Times and The Sunday Times.
Richard, have you been to Vang Vieng?
I have. I was there over the weekend for 1 night and 2 days. A rather intense and memorable 2 days.
I bet. What's it like? If you were to describe it to people who haven't been, what sort of a place is it?
Well, to anyone who has been backpacking, it will be very familiar. It's a classic backpacker town, but a very physically beautiful and striking one. So Laos is a very little known, rather obscure country in Southeast Asia. And I've not spent a lot of time there before. I'd only been there once before. You arrive in the capital, Vientiane, which is a rather sleepy, relatively modern Southeast Asian city. You take a road, used to be a very bad road, and then you get on a new, fast, Chinese-built motorway. It takes about an hour and a half. And you come off the motorway and you're in this really stunningly beautiful natural landscape of limestone cliffs. I mean, cliffs is not the right word. They're mountains, really, soaring up all around, grey limestone faced with tropical vegetation. And then this river running through it and this rather small town in the middle with local people running bars and hostels and a large number of mostly young, largely European backpackers.
And Richard, you were there covering this horrific tragedy. Just explain what happened.
Well, the facts are still coming out. A Lao police investigation is going on, but it seems fairly clear that on the 11th of November, which was a Monday, the evening was beginning in the town of Vang Vieng. And it was beginning in the normal way with the backpackers, the many backpackers who visit there were in their hostels ready for a night out in the bars and restaurants of the town. And in a lot of these hostels, not all of them, but a number of them, the evening begins in the same way with the barman giving free shots of vodka or whiskey to everyone who's there. So there's a party in the hostel every night, and it goes on until the early hours of the morning. There's a swimming pool, there's a bar, there's a pool table. It's like a kind of university JCR surrounded by limestone cliffs, tropical jungles, but with free booze, at least at the start of the evening. And this happens in a number of these places. In the Nana Backpackers Hostel, the shots were given out, people started to drink them, some people had more than one, and the evening went on. Now, not immediately, but the following day, some of those who had been present and who had drunk started to become ill.
Right, so so he's explaining what happened, because it did all seem to happen on one night. I do think that's strange. If they weren't all in the same place drinking the same drinks, how did it all happen in the same night? You know, is that just a weird coincidence? Anyway, as he's talking, I'm going to be showing some pictures of Laos that I've downloaded just so you... I mean, it looks an absolutely amazing, beautiful place. You know, so just don't let it put you off going there if you feel like going to Laos, but just be careful what you drink. That's all, I think. Right, let me just start him again.
And some of them became very ill.
Last week, I got severe methanol poisoning from a hostel in Vang Vieng in Laos. We had a big table, about 10 people, and we were all sharing a bottle of locally sourced Lao vodka. It wasn't until 15 hours later that my symptoms started to kick in, which were extreme tiredness. I was practically asleep for a whole day. I was violently throwing up. I was really lucid. I had visual impairment, like I could barely see. It was just like bright lights. My boyfriend made a decision to take me to a private hospital in Vientiane.
So this girl who's speaking now, she was very lucky, wasn't she?
And the people there literally saved my life.
And on the 13th of November, in the early hours of the morning, 2 young Australian women, 19 years old, were taken by someone, I think by their friends, to the local hospital, which is just a few hundred yards away in this small town. And there, one of them was reeling and disoriented. She was put on a drip by the doctors, but she very soon, within half an hour, had a seizure and went into a coma. And at that point, the doctors in this small district hospital realized that this was really beyond their capabilities. And she was put in an ambulance and sent to the capital of Vientiane, where she died a few days later. By that time, 5 other people had died. 5 of those who died were young women. One of them was an American man of 57. And the toxicology reports from the hospitals in nearly all those cases showed that they died of poisoning by the chemical methanol.
How horrific. And Richard, just for a bit of context, I mean, these are shots they were given, free shots. This isn't something they've paid for. Is that normal in this part of the world?
It's normal in hostels like this at the beginning of the evening. And I think the fact they were free is probably part of the explanation for what happened, because these are businesses. They don't operate on big margins. To stay in that hostel, I think, cost about £4 or £5 a night. It's really cheap. So these shots were being given away, and one can assume that it was cheap stuff, very cheap stuff. And that may be the explanation as to why it was not only of such low quality, but had been contaminated with this deadly chemical.
And is this unusual? Because we've sort of heard very mixed reports about places like Vang Vieng. A lot of people do die, and you don't hear reports about it normally.
It's certainly unusual for 6 people to die essentially in one evening. And that's why we have heard about this, because these very young people.
Yeah, it does. I can't help but feel like it does feel a bit strange that 6 people in one evening, because you'll hear that not only this guy says, that this is a common practice that they do, sort of mixing these drinks with methanol. And every now and again, somebody does die. Obviously, the thing is, there's people dying all the time of all sorts of things that we don't get to hear about, aren't they? I mean, just car accidents or traffic accidents or, I don't know, freak accidents. There's always people. When we get to hear about it, it's when the mainstream news decides we're going to hear about it. But also, it's because it's unusual, something unusual. So, yeah, one person, although, one person's life is important to their family and everything, as far as the mainstream media is concerned, only becomes a news story. What decides when it becomes a news story? And when it's 6 people, all from different parts of the globe as well, young girls, attractive girls, because they do like to show sort of like attractive faces and things. It is unusual. It is unusual. So that's the only thing that strikes me about this. I still think it sits uneasy with me that 6 people in one night in a small place, only a small place. So was it one particular brand or one particular batch of alcohol that was so very bad, or was it was it deliberate? It just does bring up the question when there's so many die at once.
People, their parents, their families are devastated, their friends are posting on social media. That is extremely unusual.
Bountiful bouquets and flags flown at half-mast for 2 best friends who will never get to see the outpouring in their honour. A GoFundMe set up by the families of Holly Bowles and Bianca Jones has been steadily and rapidly climbing in donations to be used in their legacy.
To know that there is a good comes out of evil, that I think is possibly one of the only ways that you can grieve and make some sort of sense out of the tragedy that you were thrust upon.
Heavy drinking is part of the culture of this backpacker trail on which Vang Vieng lies. And cheap drinks are part of that culture too. And so are drugs. People tell you that some of these bars, semi-openly, I mean, not with much pretense of secrecy, sell methamphetamine, opium, even magic mushrooms, things like that.
And that makes you want to do think these girls maybe had been experimenting with anything, and maybe they were trying magic mushrooms, and we know we've got to avoid mushrooms after the the bloody death cap mushroom poisoning thing in Australia. None of us want to eat mushrooms anymore. Certainly not button mushrooms, do we? But yeah, it just feels like maybe there's something more to this case. I don't know.
About MDMA. So it would be surprising if this sort of thing didn't happen more often. I did talk to one of the doctors at the hospital where these unfortunate people were treated when they first got sick. And I said this to him, had you ever seen methanol poisoning before? And he said, no, in 30 years, I've never seen it before. Now, to be honest, I'm not sure if he was telling me the truth. Before talking to me, he had sought permission from his boss. It's possible that he was told then, make it look good for us.
Yeah, and he's 100% certain someone in a hospital there will have seen that poisoning before, and what they come to talk about later, you'll see with the next guy who's talking, it reminds me of Spain a little bit, and the places like Benidorm. Of course, those hospitals, that'd be like a hospital in Benidorm saying that, oh no, they've never seen a British person drunk and fall off a balcony before. It's happening all the time. Because it must drive them mad, to be honest, because, people talk about, people in Britain talk about people using, the National Health Service and everything. Imagine what it's like in Benidorm, in the hospital there. They've always got drunks in. Drunken people been fighting, fell off balconies, car accidents, you name it. You can watch it. There's a programme on the telly about it, isn't there? Benidorm ER or whatever. Honestly, you just think, God, they must get really sick of it sometimes, because then they're all tourists. They go there, they're drunk, they can't speak Spanish, and it'd be exactly the same in Laos. There'll be lots of incidents, because when you get all that drink and drugs, of course, by the sound of it, it's going to be accidents. There's going to be a lot of problems, and people are going to be taken to the hospital, and they'll have seen it all before. So for him to say he's never seen it before, that personally, I think is a blatant lie by that doctor or by that hospital. Tourist places, they always want to protect their reputation, don't they? Because they want the tourists to keep coming. If it's a place where, the biggest part of the economy is tourism. And also, of course, Laos is a one-party dictatorship. So that guy at the hospital, he'll be also, someone probably from the government will be phoning him and saying, don't mention anything about the other 20 people that died so far this year. He won't be free to tell the truth, because he'll be saying what he's been told to say, won't he? That makes sense, to be honest.
Richard, taking a step back, tell us a bit about Laos as a country. As you say, it's not many people will necessarily have been. Give us a bit of the history and the context. I mean, how poor is it, and how does it compare to its neighbours? Yeah,
it's a very little known and little reported story. I mean, I've been reporting on Southeast Asia for nearly 30 years. This is only the second time I've been. The first time I went was to do a different story, and it is perhaps the story for which Laos is best known. And that is that during the Vietnam War, Laos was used by the Americans, by the CIA, as a base for what's known as the Secret War. So in the war against the North Vietnamese communist forces, the CIA, illegally, I think, based themselves there and used an Air Force base, actually in what's now Vang Vieng.
Oh, the CIA doing something illegally? Oh, no, well, gosh, America would never do anything illegal, would they?
To bomb the North Vietnamese Viet Cong as they travel through the jungle to fight South Vietnam. And one of the legacies of this has been that Laos has one of the highest concentrations of unexploded ordnance, so landmines and also cluster bombs, unexploded cluster bombs, which are scattered all over this small country. And I mean, I met a father who'd lost his 5-year-old son a few days before.
You know, this is it. These are the things we don't get to hear about, do we, about these holiday places, you know. So they've got all these unexploded bombs there that the CIA kindly left there. And yeah, this guy's saying that he got talk last time he was there doing a report on that story. He got talking to someone who's 5-year-old had died playing in the garden and found a bomb.
They'd just been playing in the garden. They'd been digging around. They found something metallic, tried to pull it out, and it was a bomb that exploded and killed one boy and injured others. So the answer to your question is that Laos is a poor.
That's so very sad, isn't it? Oh, awful. So if you find anything metal in your garden, don't try and pull it out, for God's sake.
Country that's had a terribly difficult history from which it's still suffering. It's a communist dictatorship, a one-party state. It's very close to China. Everywhere you go, you see any kind of big or spectacular buildings or investment, locals will tell you that's Chinese money.
And Richard, how did it go from the Vietnam War, from being effectively a war zone, from having all this unexploded ordnance, to being such a big part of the backpacker trail?
The war came to an end in the 1970s, and what had previously been known as the hippie trail, I suppose in the 80s, became the backpacker trail. So the kind of people who had been wearing kaftans and had kind of oily, smelly hair, smoking big reefers, gave way to people of a similar age carrying the Lonely Planet Guide, which of course so many of us still use today. But it was the same kind of destinations that people were going to: Thailand, Laos, Vietnam and Cambodia. These are extremely beautiful, very alluring countries with rich cultures, very agreeable, welcoming, gentle people, and they're also very cheap. So it's an ideal place if you're a young person with a spirit of adventure, but not much in funds. They're ideal places to go. You can spend a lot of time. Your money goes a long way. And various places, you know, by some alchemy become established as backpacker haunts. And Vang Vieng was one of those.
And will this tragedy make a difference? I mean, do you think this is a watershed moment for the authorities, for all the restaurants and hotels and the entire industry really in Laos?
It's clearly very embarrassing for the government of Laos, but they are an authoritarian one-party state. The media is completely controlled. The only news that local people there were getting was social media. There isn't going to be a lot of pressure from public opinion within Laos itself, but clearly foreign governments are going to be concerned. And already the families, the parents of at least one of the young women, Australian women, 19, who died in this tragedy, has spoken out and said from the hospital where his daughter died that we must make sure this kind of thing can't be allowed to happen again. So I think we're going to see more pressure of that type. I have to say, over the weekend,
I feel like the families of these girls, certainly the Australian girls, from what the fathers or parents have said so far, they are going to, you know, we've talked before about how families of victims, they use tragedies in different ways, don't they? You know, you get families like Gabby Petito's dad, Joe, him and their family, they've set up a charity, you know, to help victims of domestic violence, help find missing people. And then you get other families who just want complete privacy, don't want any sort of publicity, etc., and they just want to grieve privately in their own way. And I just feel that just by even what's happened so far, the fathers, and I'm saying fathers because it's the fathers that have come out and spoken as far as I know, but it's obviously not just the fathers, but I think they're going to do something positive with it. Some people have to. They just have to. That's their way of surviving through these losses. Holly Wells's dad, Kevin, he was another one. You know, he wrote a book. He wanted sort of publicity, if you like. not publicity, but he wanted to tell his story. That was part of what helped him with the grieving. And then whereas Jessica Chapman, Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, the victims of Ian Huntley, Jessica's family wanted to be much more private and deal with the grief in their own way. So, but I feel that with these families of certainly of the Australian girls, I think something positive is going to come out of it, because I think they're determined that something positive will come out of it. And that's their way of dealing with it.
Apart from Nana Backpackers Hostel, all the other bars were open as normal.
If you're enjoying this episode of The Story, you can listen to more by subscribing to the podcast. It's completely free, and we'll put a link below in the description box for different ways you can follow us.
I'm Alistair Gill. I'm a chef and journalist from West London.
Now, this guy's very interesting, because this guy went there, travelled there when he was young, worked there. He's got direct experience of how they make the drinks, etc. He's very interesting, but he does swear quite a bit. So just again, to warn you.
In your time, you've also been a traveller, and you've spent a bit of time out on the backpack trail. Tell us a bit about your experiences. Tell us about arriving in Laos.
I followed, that trail as sort of most cliche teenagers do once finishing school. I went around Thailand and then went into Laos, and then I sort of really fell in love with Laos, actually. It's an amazing place, super underdeveloped, and it just felt really real. And then I suddenly arrived into Vang Vieng, and I suddenly remember feeling this thing of, wow, I'm actually kind of somewhere different now. It's kind of a bespoke sort of trashy theme park that had been made there. I mean, I think the big appeal was this thing called tubing, which, the Mekong River goes all the way down through Vang Vieng. And the gimmick is you get these big circular tubes and you sit on them and you just go down the river and you get free shots along the way.
Oh, wow.
Which, sounds amazing, but it's also an incredibly dangerous thing. I remember seeing that was where I saw most of bad fatalities sort of happen, of casualties.
Yeah. So not only you've got to worry about the shots, so they've got this big river that they go tubing down. When he started talking, I'm going to look for a picture of it and see if I can put it up. When he was talking about it, reminded me of the Apple River case. That was tubing that they were doing, wasn't it, down that river? But he said, oh, yeah, that's where I saw most of the fatalities. So he saw more than one. So there's a lot of things to worry about in this place, especially I would imagine if you go tubing on a dangerous river and you're getting free shots at the, so, you combine alcohol with tubing or any sort of, I don't know, like rafting or anything like that, any sort of action sports, combine that with alcohol and drugs, you're going to get fatalities, aren't you?
Just take us back a step. You said when you arrived in Laos, you really fell in love with it. For people who haven't been, just describe what it's like.
What's kind of amazing about it is how it felt like I'd stepped into something a bit more real. I've been in Thailand, and not that that's not amazing, but it's very swarmed. It's far more developed and it's had lots done to it, where Laos suddenly felt like you were going off the beaten path a bit more. It's the poorest country, and suddenly the people are also very different. It suddenly felt like I'd crossed the line into a different world. It was, I think, a lot more spiritual, the people there. It's amazing sceneries of huge standalone pillars of mountains, I remember so clearly, with these sort of wispy clouds around them. And there wasn't really lots of sites of things being built there, which was so amazing. There weren't like big cranes and buildings in development everywhere. And I remember being a teenager and being there thinking, wow, this is amazing. I've never seen the world like this, I remember really feeling.
And then you arrived in the town of Vang Vieng. Just describe what that's like. What were your first impressions of it?
Everyone was on the piss. It was just, Euro backpackers everywhere. But it's not a huge place. So it felt like quite condensed of the people I feel that were in Vang Vieng weren't really interested in seeing the rest of Laos. They were there as the destination to go just to, to Vang Vieng, like a Benidorm or a Cavos.
So on your first day, do you head straight to the bar? What happens?
Knowing me, I could give a safe bet that yes, that was my first destination. I talk about it now as if I'm like, oh God, I'm so above it. I wasn't. I was young and I was like, this is kind of amazing too. I want to get pissed. I want to get on one of those little rubby diggy things and get down the Mekong. But it did feel like this is grim. It did feel grim. And people were getting a different kind of piss there. And that would have come directly from the alcohol that was being served there for what it was, but also just the copious amounts that they give away for free.
And when you're there, you're offered a job. Just tell us what happened.
Yeah, so I went to the bar and I remember there was the Dutch manager there who had this big handlebar mustache and long hair. And we both needed a drinking buddy. And there I was. And we started.
I'm just going to show you a little bit of the. So apparently they call it tipsy tubing. I've just been researching it. I've just been having a look while you were. Hi, Admit. Yeah, you don't see the fatalities reported on, do you, Heather? Definitely not. So we're going to have a little look at this tipsy tubing that apparently they call it. Let me see. Channel customization. Oh, I've only just found it and now I can't find it again. There it is. It says there. Oh, let's have a look at this video because it says before the restrictions. Oh, this sort of tubing is now banned because so many people died. This is the video we're going to look at. Let's have a look. Dear me. Okay. See, this is it. You combine drink and drugs with young people and they're going to do crazy things, aren't they? They're going to do mad things. I mean, that doesn't look too bad, but yeah, they're having a drink in between. Let's see. What's the crazy thing that they said? Now there's they've made restriction. Oh, what's he got there? Oh my God, what the hell's that? That looks like something for fishing. Oh, catching like crayfish, poor things. Right, where's the actual tubing? A what? Oh, well, that's not that bad. That you can do that in Benidorm. Oh, right, okay. Oh, yeah, have another drink. That's it. Just like, oh, yeah, I've cut my knee open, but it don't matter. Let's just get a bit of alcohol. Just pour the alcohol on it. The alcohol will clean it. Oh, my God. Oh. Do you remember being that young that you could bounce, like, God, I'd just break my leg now or something. What have we got here? Dear me. He's got every bit of video that he does. He's got a drink in his hand. Oh, God, he looks completely out of it. His eyes are all over the place. Yeah. So if you've got young adults that are backpacking, this is what they're doing. Terrifying. So not only you've got to worry about them drinking alcohol that's God, not only you've got to worry about them drinking alcohol that's poisoned, you've got to worry about them doing lots of daft things. And, you know, this guy's a prime example. But bless him, he's had a good time. Those if he's survived it, those memories will live with him forever, won't they? Look at his eyes. Anyway, let's go back to the podcast. Hang on. Oh, I can't find my podcast now. Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, it's right. Where is it? There it is. Oh, why has it gone black?
After drinking, and he was like, "Yeah, we need another bartender. Work." I was like, "Absolutely. I get paid in all supplies. That's I'm all for that." And he gave me a free place to stay. And he specifically was very reserved about me being English. I was so embarrassed to be English there, really. You can just hear all the arguments, all the people yelling at the locals. It's all English accents.
And when you say yelling at the locals, just describe, what are relations like with the residents?
I think it's mixed. For the foreigners who were actually staying there and doing stints and working, they were great and we were all mates and living happily together. But like I said, I think most of the tourists who aren't seeing Laos, they're coming into Vang Vieng to have this experience of getting pissed on a tube. There's an entitlement there. They're not here to see the culture. They don't care about the people. They sure as shit don't care about what their problems are. They're there to party and have a good time and treat it just sort of like a kavos. The big danger there was also that in all those other places where, you know, are known for people to go on the strip and get off their face, there's actually usually quite good safety systems set up there. I think they're probably the most staunch, fiercely working hospitals in the world around.
It's interesting what he was saying, Larry. He was saying, because of course he went there on holiday, then he was offered a job, so he ended up working there. And that's when he got to know, like, that's when because like when I came to Spain, you come for a holiday, and then when you start to live here and you learn Spanish, and you get to know more about like how Spanish look upon British tourists, you know, and things. Because when you're coming on holiday, you don't care, you're just on holiday. You don't. I think a lot of British people, in particular, they don't even think of Spain as it's just a place you go on holiday. They don't think of it as a proper country or anything. You know, it's more than just sun, and it's more than just tourism. And although tourism is a big part of the Spanish economy, and certainly in certain areas, but I think what sometimes people forget is everybody comes to Spain. It's not just British people who come to Spain. It's the whole of the world wants to come to Spain because, you know, it's got this sort of good climate, and it's cheap compared to other places. It's not as cheap as that sort of place, but then it's more familiar for people. It's more comfortable to come to Spain because it's not that far away from, you know, any European country. And so when you come to live here, though, you get to see the other side of it. You get to see what irritates Spanish people about tourists and things. And that's what he's talking about there, how he saw a different side of it, and he started to be embarrassed about being British because he sort of grew up a little bit while he was there, didn't he? He came out, he was one of those embarrassing tourists, just, you know, getting absolutely bladdered and, you know, not caring about anything about having a good time. And then he became someone who worked there and saw things from a different perspective. Because the other thing is, sometimes tourists, they treat the people like working in the places like rubbish, you know, like you'd see them here. It's just awful, you know, because if they start calling them names like, you know, about, you know, xenophobic names like, oh, why don't you speak English? You should speak English and stuff like that. And then call them names, you know, and Dagos and this, that and the other. But of course, Spanish have got their own names for us, don't forget. The thing is, people don't see that side of it. So, you know, you get Spanish people like that as well. Don't get me wrong. There's Spanish people that are absolute twonks who don't like foreigners. Just like there's British people who don't like foreigners or in all nationalities. And I think that's why I sort of feel different, because I've been a foreigner in a foreign country. It makes you think differently about everything. The way you're looked on, you know, you don't want to be tarred with the same brush as everybody else. But, you know, some people do. Some people say, oh, everybody English, they're mad, you know, and you do get that. I've been told to get back to my own country at least 3 times, if not more. You know, get back to your own country, or you're not in England now, you know, all sorts of comments. So, and when you hear that said to you, because that's the problem about learning Spanish, when you don't understand Spanish, you wouldn't know what someone was saying to you. But now that I can speak Spanish, people do say things under the breath and they think you won't understand them. And there's nothing more satisfying than turning around and saying, what? Did you tell me to get back to my own country? And they'd go, oh, I didn't realise you spoke Spanish. You know, so that's just the way it is. You know, xenophobia is in every country.
Corfu and the Greek islands, where there isn't that in Laos. And actually, when things go tits up, you suddenly realise you're quite far away from anything that's really going to help you.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the Westerners sort of have this thing in them, especially when you're a teenager, of thinking there are safety nets and guidelines and precautions to everything we do. You know, if something will catch you, you don't need to care about what you're doing because something will help you if stuff goes wrong. There isn't that. And I think actually what speaks hugely to that is these deaths that have happened. They died in a Thai hospital. That says a lot. The drinking happened in Laos and they died in the Thai hospital.
Yeah.
Alistair, given your experience there 10 years ago, what did you think when you saw the stories breaking in the press over the last week or so about what happened to a group of West?
I think a lot of the people that go there, the young people that go there, they probably are quite from well-off families, aren't they? Because, you know, a lot of working class families, a lot of poorer families, they can't afford to send their kids to university, never mind send them to Laos for a gap year holiday. You know, unless they're capable of sort of supporting themselves somehow by working, you know, you are constrained by your income, you know, or whether your mummy and daddy can afford to help or not, of course. So probably a lot of the people that go there. Listen, I went to university as a mature student. I was 28 when I went to university, and oh God, you know, some of those young people there, they're not there because they want to learn anything. They're there because it's expected of them. You know, that's what they do in their sort of world that they come from. You go to school, you go to sixth form or college or whatever, then you go to university, then you go traveling. Now that wasn't a thing maybe when I was young. When I was at university, but you know, the lecturers at university, they loved us mature students because we'd been out there, we'd seen what it was like. I'd worked at Ladbrokes for years and seen what it's like to work for a faceless corporation who, you know, didn't give a toss about you. Like it was just about, you know, what do you mean you're ill? Are you coming to work or not? You know, like some people have never sort of experienced what it's like to have to work for a living at all, and it's hard. So then, when I did go to university, luckily I could go. I could support myself because I got a grant for being a mature student because I had worked and I'd paid into the system for 10 years. And also because you got loans as well and things. So, and I was working at the weekends. That's how I supported myself through university. And of course, fees were free then. I mean, it's different kettle of fish now because you have to pay your university fees as well. So, but, oh God, the lecturers, they loved us. I wasn't the only mature student. Obviously, in my sort of year, like I was studying politics and international relations, and there was a few of us mature students, and as far as the lecturers were concerned, they loved us because we were interested. We were doing our subjects. We were going to lectures because we were genuinely interested in what they were saying, not just like because, oh, well, we're there because mummy and daddy's paying for us to be here. This is what we do. We'll get an average degree. We'll probably just scrape a degree. You know, take it with us to get a job in the city or wherever we're going to get a job, because this was in Reading. So, you know, we weren't like that. The mature students were there because we'd been out there and we'd experienced what it was like to live in the working world where nobody cared about you, just a number, and you had to support yourself. And so you were genuinely interested in doing well at university, because this was for your future, because if you did well at university, you had a chance of getting a better job, earning more money, etc. And you were genuinely interested in your subjects because that's why you'd chosen it. You know, a lot of these young people, they're not interested in their subject. They just got to do a degree in something, you know, so it could be anything. They do a degree in, I don't know, whatever. They do a degree in cleaning the toilets if they thought they could get a degree in it, and they could take that with them where, you know, onto their next job or whatever. It's just what's expected of them. They're not really interested in studying. They're not really interested in what they're doing. They're just, I know, don't get me wrong, I don't blame them. Lucky them. They're just interested in having a good time. They're probably 18 years old. They're just interested in the cheap booze in the university. And believe me, going to university, God, if I could, I would, if I could afford it, I would just go and do degree after degree, because doing a degree, it's fabulous, because living, you know, being part of the university, you're like in a bubble. They treat you really nicely. You've got a welfare officer, tutors. If you've got any problems, they actually care about them. It was like really different for me because, you know, as I say, at Ladbrokes, where I'd worked, they didn't give a toss at what problems you had. It's just, are you coming to work or not? You know, like, what do you mean you're having a day off because you've got cancer or whatever? You know, honestly, it was really like that. So going to the university where they actually cared about your welfare and what was going on with you was like a revelation for me, you know, because I come from a completely different background. So I forgot, now I've started waffling, I forgot why I started saying this. So, yeah. I've forgotten why I started off saying it. But so most of these young people that are going to these places, the lives they live are so, like, they wouldn't care about poverty in that country. Like, there's some countries I just couldn't go to because it would upset me too much to see. It upset me enough going to Madrid and seeing all the homeless people. You know, so the thought of going to India or Mexico, or where they street children, well, that's apart from the animals and things, you know, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it because I'd be like destroyed, like emotionally, seeing people homeless and seeing animals mistreated. And so for me to go somewhere, it'd have to be somewhere where I wouldn't have to think I was going to be traumatized. But of course, these young people, they don't care. They come from privileged backgrounds. Some of them probably care. Some of them probably do. I'm not saying all of them don't. But not only that, they're young. And when you're young, you don't overthink things so much. You just want to have a good time. You're not really thinking about what's going on around you, are you?
Tourists in the same town you were in.
It's incredibly sad and tragic. It really is. And, you know, my heart goes out to all their family, but it was really unsurprising. I was surprised that it gained this big traction because it's not new. You know, when I was there, this was sort of known. My manager told me that someone died there every 2 weeks. I can't tell you how accurate that is, but it all added up.
So did you hear that, what he said? He said, my manager told me that somebody died every 2 weeks there. But he did say, I don't know how accurate that is. So he said, I think the whole thing about this story, isn't it? The key thing about this story is that there were so many affected at one time. So it obviously happens often. It probably happen again, unfortunately. But the thing that made it so... you know, such a big thing is that there were so many all affected at one time.
From what I was seeing, for sure, especially when you add in the activities that were there to do while you were on this sort of moonshine and drugs or going down the river.
You point out that even people who haven't taken drugs, just people who are drinking alcohol, it's a different kind of alcohol to what you'd get here. What do we know about how it's actually made? Why is it so cheap?
Well, they're just making it themselves. A classic thing would be having, the Cobra whiskey, which is what our bar had. It was this massive jar, and inside was just this king cobra in the middle.
An actual cobra?
Yeah, an actual cobra, yeah.
An actual cobra. Yes, an actual cobra in a bottle of whiskey. And that reminded me of what you can get in the local Chinese restaurant near me. I don't know if you still can now, but you could get this lizard liqueur, and it literally had a lizard in the bottle, like a rotting lizard. I mean, why would you want to drink that? You might get a bit of the lizard in your drink. I like lizards. I don't want to drink a lizard or eat a lizard. But yeah, so he's talking about they would actually have this King Cobra whiskey with an actual cobra in there. Oh, come on. Disgusting.
Yeah, for sure. An actual cobra was in there.
Oh my God.
And I think, you think of it as this Westerner of like, oh, but everything's got a safety net. Everything has the precautions and is meant to be doing what they're doing. So it's all safe. Young teenagers are asleep to that, to actually where they are. And it's not their fault. Of course it's not. And it's actually hard to point to a villain in this situation of what's going on. The methanol is completely invisible and undetectable unless you have the exact sort of technology, which for sure as shit Laos does not have. The moonshine there of just homemade stuff was a different kind of drunk. I can't spot too much from the science behind it. All I know is it was being made in the bars and there was no testings or anything like that after it. Of course there wasn't. It went straight from bathtub to mouth.
And you were a teenager when you arrived. I mean, if you'd been stood in that bar now, looking around, describe the sort of people who come in. Are they all teenagers? Are they backpackers? In this case, we sort of heard about, there was a lawyer from London in her late 20s. Is that the sort of the crowd?
I think it speaks volumes to what's going on. That was the character of one of the people who tragically lost their lives. Because I think you have it in your head that it's going to be just loads of teenagers, and it is mainly, but it's people of all ages, but probably with the same kind of mindset of let's party and have a good time. There's no one there looking for the yoga retreat. Everyone is wanting to have fun and let go and push things a bit. And the dangers have showed themselves. They've always been there, and tragedy has been happening there for years. But I think it's good that it's coming to some light in the last couple of weeks.
It sounds like such a...
No, it's funny what you're saying, because somebody I know, their son went off to Thailand and died in a motorbike accident in Thailand. And his dad had to go over there and, so there's a lot, obviously, you can imagine, there's a lot of paperwork to sort out and repatriate the body and blah, blah, blah. They had a GoFundMe. I mean, it was terrible because, again, a young lad gone off, travelling and died in a motorcycle accident. Now, his daddy couldn't get to find out what, all the details of how it had happened. He was just stonewalled by the authorities because in Thailand, again, these backpacker places, they don't want this publicity. They want people to come backpacking. So you're fighting the language barrier, and you're fighting the bureaucracy barrier, like Jay Slater's parents. When you go into a foreign country, if your child dies in a foreign country, or anyone that dies in a foreign country, not only you're dealing with the grief of losing your child or your loved one, you're dealing with bureaucracy that you don't understand. You're dealing with oh God, that reminds me, I've got something to tell you about the Jay Slater case, but I'll do that another time. But you're dealing with the bureaucracy that you don't understand because it's a completely different country with a different way of dealing with things, a different language. Just, my heart just breaks for anyone. My heart breaks for anyone who loses someone, of course, but it's bad enough when you lose them in your own country, when you've got to go off to somewhere else. And a completely, it's not only a foreign country, it's a completely alien country. You know, like, you know, if your child died in, I don't know, your child died in Australia, there's some commonalities, aren't there, between Britain and Australia, or even Britain and America and that. But when you go into a country that's got a completely different language, a completely different culture, and you know, one party, what do you call it, a one party dictatorship running the country, and wants to protect its tourism, you know, like these people are dealing with, it just must be, I just can't imagine what it must be like. Unbearable.
Dangerous place to have been, particularly as a teenager, with so many things going wrong around you. And as you said, no real safety net, no great hospitals, nothing nearby if anything went horribly wrong. How did you end up leaving? How did your...
Hi, Jay. It's nice to see you, but I just want to tell you, this is not a dating site. It's not an OnlyFans site. I'm here just to talk about crime or talk about Spanish. But thank you for your interest, but I don't get involved in that sort of conversation. Thank you.
time there come to an end?
The place just got shut down. There was a bust up and we all got sort of taken to the local authorities, and I did a night in a Laos prison cell. But I think so much of this danger is, you know, within how we conduct ourselves. This shouldn't put people off going to Laos. You know, it's a beautiful place and it's an amazing people and it's full of culture and it's a wonderful, wonderful country. It doesn't mean don't go there. It means screw your head on and just understand what the situation is and what the dangers are and what has been happening there.
Now that's it, and that's what I was saying right at the beginning of this video, which I think is really important. It's not saying don't go to these places. Go. There'd be beautiful places to visit. We can see from just a few photos I've shared as we were listening to that. It's beautiful, the culture, the heritage, everything. Go, and they'll be interested, and the people are lovely, and you know, it's not a question of don't go, it's just be sensible when you go, isn't it? You know, problem with young people is you can't tell them to be sensible, because they just don't listen, do they? I think that's it.
Our thanks to the chef.
So yeah, so I thought that was a very interesting podcast. So thank you to Times Radio for that. And I hope you've enjoyed listening to it and thinking about, you know, or you found it interesting. Of course, the main thing that we're here sort of to talk about, the main thing that matters is these three girls, and of course the other three people that have died that there doesn't seem to be so much information about. And I just hope that if nothing else, at least their story and what's happened to them will prevent it happening to other people in the future. I hope that at least, I suppose if it even saves one young person's life, you know, the warnings that the family are giving out, etc., that's one person at least that's been saved, and that's what matters. So, okay, let me just put my picture back. I will be back. As they say, I will probably see you later, I expect. And yeah, I'll see you later in the next video. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Thank you for caring about these people that have died. Thank you for, I hope you, if you've got young, especially if you've got young people in your family, you know, to just warn them, give them the warnings, and hope for the best. What else can you do? But young people are going to go to these places, and they should go have carefree experiences, but they do need to think a little bit at least about what they're drinking. So anyway, hi Sephi, thank you so much. I'll see you very soon in the next video, and until then, may your God always go with you. Bye.